The movie begins in a dystopian future where humans have begun to evolve in strange ways. In an unspecified area, a mother watches her young son playing down at the beach with worry in her eyes. After staring at him for a bit, she yells out for him not to eat anything he finds there. After he returns home, Brecken goes into the bathroom and brushes his teeth. Suddenly, he picks up the trash can on the floor and starts eating it like it was food. His mother watches in horror at what he is doing, making it seem natural. That night, while Brecken is sleeping, his mother suffocates him to death, scared that he is not human. She then calls a number and informs the other person on the other line to tell the father of her son to come pick up the corpse. Once she closed the call, the weight of what she had done weighed heavily on her, and she started crying. Brecken's father, Lang, comes to the location he had been told and finds the child dead on the bed. Saddened by the sight, he begins to cry. The scene changes and we are taken to a room where a man is sleeping on a floating bed that shifts consistently with some type of sensors attached to parts of his body. A woman by the name of Caprice enters the room and finds him moaning and sighing in pain as each shift happens. After opening the windows to let light in, she gently touches his shoulders and wakes him up. As soon as he is awake, Saul tells her that they need to change his bed because it isn't anticipating his brain anymore. Caprice assures him that she will get to it immediately and tells him that she has found a new hormone in his body. Taking him to a different room, Caprice begins to see the new organ that has grown in Saul's body. When she asks if he can feel it, he explains that he can and tells her that it was probably why his bed couldn't anticipate his needs anymore, because it was shifting his pain centers. Saul had a condition that made him consistently develop new organs, which made his bodily functions difficult and painful. After Saul has his breakfast in a special room they have prepared, where there is a chair that moves him around like his bed, the two head out to the National Organ Registry. When they knock on the door, a man by the name of Whippet opens the door and welcomes them in. Walking them inside, he introduces them to his colleague Timlin, saying that it was an honor to have them there. When Caprice asks about the procedure because it was their first time, Timlin expresses the importance of the registration from a security standpoint. Saul acknowledges this fact, since human bodies were consistently changing. Whippet tells them that human evolution has become unpredictable and takes the disappearance of pain receptors in most humans as an example. He also explains that since there were no infections anymore, people had stopped washing their hands. He tells them that since there were no infections or pain, people were starting to perform surgeries in public, which he found repulsive. Timlin asks the two guests what their relationship was, and Caprice tells them that they were performance artists. Caprice would remove Saul's consistently growing organs in front of the live audience. After a bit more discussion, Timlin suggests they start the registration process. The process consisted of Timlin and Whippet inserting a tube with a camera on it inside Saul's body and seeing the new organ so it could be tracked and not transferred from parent to child, changing the human anatomy completely. Caprice continues to tape the process and the explanations they give her for their audience. Timlin suddenly notices the recording and tells her it's forbidden to film there. When they're finished, Saul invites them to the show they're performing that night. That night, a group of people are gathered with cameras and are standing around to watch Caprice work on Saul on their performance. Dressed in a beautiful red gown, Caprice begins the surgery, moving around the robotic hands inside Saul's body. As she's doing that, Saul feels intense pleasure, closing his eyes and enjoying the moment. Caprice then removes one of his organs before closing him up again. After the performance, Timlin approaches Saul and quietly asks him if he and Caprice consider surgery as sex. When he doesn't give her a definite answer, she expresses her interest in him by telling him she realized what was happening when she wanted him to be cutting into her. After his horrible discovery of his child's death, Lang made an appearance at the Caprice and Saul show. Land consistently keeps eating something that looks like a purple candy bar. Suddenly, one of the men there grabs it and tries to eat it, but immediately gets sick, collapsing on the floor and vomiting purple goo. After the incident, Timlin and Whippet are called to talk to Dr. Cope about the event. Cope asks them about their relationship with the artists and if they have a portfolio of all the new organs he has removed, which they confirm. Timlin mentions the artistry of their work, telling him that Caprice would tattoo the organs while they're still in Saul's body before removing them. When Cope insinuates that Caprice was the real artist, Whippet explains that to some degree, Saul was willing the new organs to grow. In a different part of the city, people are gathered to watch another show by a man with several ears around his body. People in the crowd erratically cut each other up as it has become become the new sexual act. Saul attends the show and meets the artist's coordinator, who suggests he meet with a man called Nasatir, explaining that they have the same specialty. While leaving the party, Saul met Lang, who had been waiting for him outside. Land asks him to use his special equipment to do an autopsy on his dead son, explaining that he was murdered by his mother. Lang tells the man that he could make his son part of his show and that it would bring a lot of traction because of the backstory. Saul goes home and tells Caprice what the man has said. The two plan out their next show by putting Caprice in the machine. When Saul accidentally nicks her, the moment becomes sexual and the two hold each other inside while the knives make small cuts all over their body. The following night, Saul meets with Cope, and it is revealed he had been working undercover to bring down an evolutionary group that was radicalizing. Saul updates him about the woman who had approached him during the performance and the name she has given him. After his meeting, Saul goes to see Dr. Nasir, who is fascinated to meet him. After a brief introduction, Nasir installs something inside Saul's abdomen that would help him have control over the things he grows. Once they're done, Saul goes home to find Caprice, who is having people work on the sarcophagus, the machine they use to make art with. After a sensual time with Caprice where she rips open his stitches and sucks on his organs as if giving oral pleasure, Saul goes to find Brecken's mother, Juna, to ask her about her son's death. She tells him everything about her son's condition and how she didn't feel like he was human. She even admits to confessing it to the police, but they wouldn't believe her. The scene changes, and we are taken to a small factory in a remote area where Lang is headed. Inside, he finds dozens of his employees, all making plastic bars that many of them have to eat to survive. After hearing their production would be up and running again in no time, Lang tells one of his employees, Tar, to make sure the whole operation is ready to move at any time, because he was planning to make them go public. Back in the city, Caprice attends a show by a rivalry, mesmerized by the woman having her face mutilated. After the show, Caprice goes to speak to the star of the show and gets invited to a party at a hotel where she gets her forehead mutilated. Caprice goes home and tells Saul about the evening and her desire to lead the Brecken show they had planned. When he agrees, she tells him that she wants to do more than just perform, but also construct. Saul goes to the National Organ Register to meet with Whippet and finds out that he was the inner beauty pageant registrar after all. After a brief conversation with him about the pageant, Saul is on his way to leave and runs into Timlin. After asking him to speak to her in her office, she expresses the fascination she has for him in vivid detail and even asks Saul to sometimes put her in his show. Timlin then kisses Saul passionately, but they suddenly stop when he explains he isn't good with the old way of sex. That night, Saul and Caprice go to Lang's hotel room to speak to him about their upcoming performance. Lang opens the fridge he had been keeping his son in, and Caprice is shocked by the sight, having second thoughts about what they're doing. Saul becomes increasingly curious as to why Lang wanted his son to have a public autopsy. Saul speaks to Lang about his son's eating conditions, which Lang explains was a natural process. He tells Saul he has always had a problem eating food just like Brecken, and he wanted the public to know that. Staring Saul down, Lang asks him if he is going to do the show or not. Lang takes them to their workplace and shows them the raw synthetic material they use to make their bars. Explains that many people have had elaborate surgeries that made them capable of eating plastic, but Brecken was the first one who could do it naturally. Lang explains that his ex-wife hated him and his kind, stealing Brecken away from them. Lang tells them that although it may sound impossible that a surgically altered characteristic could get passed down genetically, they believed Brecken was their miracle child, and they only wanted to show him to the world along with their existence. The following day, Caprice and Saul announce that there will be a show and present Brecken. During the autopsy, it is revealed that Brecken's organs had been surgically altered, despite Lang's belief that he was naturally born that way. Lang rushes out of the performance chamber crying, unable to believe what he has seen. While he is sitting outside on the stairs, Lang is murdered by two guests in the audience who were also the repair people for the machine owned by Caprice and Saul. After the show, Saul goes to speak to Cope and confronts him about changing the child's organs. Cope admits that they had a man inside who changed it up because Brecken's insides looked weird. He reveals that the person who made the switch was Timlin to protect the truth of their evolution from coming out. Cope explains that if something like that came out, they would never be able to put it back in. Saul asks Cope about Lang's murder, but the detective admits that it was a surprise for him too. Saul knows that it doesn't matter who killed him, because it was going to make him a martyr for his cause, pushing the others to fight harder. Looking at him strangely, Cope asks if Saul is becoming a believer in the cause, but Saul leaves without answering, a clear statement that their work together was done. After he goes home, Saul feels a lot of pain and is unable to sleep. When Caprice lies down next to him, he tells her that he wants her to do a second autopsy on him because he wants to try the toxic purple bars. After she agrees with him, the two share a normal kiss like they've never done before. Later, Saul is in his adjusting chair, attempting to eat normal food, and struggling, fighting to get it past his throat. While he does that, Caprice prepares her camera and the purple bars that they had gotten from Lang. After watching him suffer, Caprice asks him if he is ready to try it, and Saul confirms that he is. Ripping up one of the purple bars, Caprice hands him the bar and he takes his first bite. As he chews, the chair that anticipates his brain and the needs of his body slowly starts to decrease in speed until it completely stops. Saul feels peace inside his body for the first time. Witnessing the event both up front and with her camera, Caprice zooms in on Saul's smiling face. As the close-up focuses on his eyes, a single teardrop falls down his face. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.